morning. It's Thursday, January 8th. This is the CBC Morning News.
In the Montreal area today, emergency shelters are jammed as hundreds of thousands of Quebecers try to cope without power. And that's our top story today.
2 to 3 million people without power, and Hydro-Quebec has called in emergency crews from the U.S. to help get the power flowing again. This hour, live to Montreal for a full update.
Also today, Titanic, a blockbuster movie. A lot of people talking about it, aren't they, Bill? Later this hour, we head for Winnipeg and a collector who helped make sure the props on board ship were as authentic as possible. Colleen.
Oh, I saw the authentic deck chair down at the Maritime Museum. Very neat to see that. The weather isn't helping the emergency crews in Quebec and Eastern Ontario. More freezing rain throughout the area and the Maritimes. In sports, the Senators had all the power they needed to beat Dallas. Details right after the news.
Between 2.5 and 3 million Quebecers may have to make do without electricity until sometime next week. That's the latest word from Hydro-Quebec. Large sections of Hydro-Quebec service grid buckled and collapsed overnight under the weight of a second ice storm in 3 days. At this point, almost 900,000 customers, homes and businesses are still without power, and more ice is on the way. Montreal this morning, a spectacle of ice. Environment Canada says another 20 or 30 millimeters of freezing rain will fall by tomorrow, and then very cold weather will follow on the weekend, bringing more misery for displaced residents as well as repair crews. The states of Maine and Vermont have sent crews north to help out in Quebec. Hydro-Quebec had managed to reconnect about 300,000 customers by last night, but with the new ice fall, there are now about 130,000 more people off the network than were knocked out by the first storm. And the CBC's Ron Charles in Montreal now with some of those people. Hi, Ron.
Morning, Joanne.
Tell us a little bit about where you are and how many people are at the shelter today.
I'm at what is a sports center in a neighborhood called Côte de Neige, just north of downtown Montreal. There were 240 people here who spent the night to escape the cold and darkness of their own homes. Many people with children, a lot of seniors as well. And a lot of them have woken up now and they've just finished breakfast here. They can stay here much of the day if they like. A lot of people are going home to check on their houses, but with no heat and no power, there's not much point staying there.
Is it mostly foot traffic in and around the city today?
Traffic is actually surprisingly light in and around the city because a lot of people are heeding the warnings and staying home if they don't have to go out. Of course, a lot of schools are closed. Traffic at the airport's been a lot of flights were canceled at Dorval Airport and at the airport in Ottawa as well. So traffic has not been actually that bad this morning. It is difficult getting around because, of course, overnight with the rain that fell, the freezing rain that fell, a lot more tree branches have fallen. Some are falling on roads, yes, on sidewalks, so it's difficult getting around.
Well, Ron, Hydro-Quebec is saying they may not be able to restore electricity until sometime next week. Now, do you think that most shelters are prepared to house people for that long?
The shelters are this one is packed to capacity. They've actually requisitioned another building nearby to handle the overflow that they are expecting. Whether the people who are running the shelters are fairly well organized. The volunteers seem to be very well organized. They've handled the thousands of people who they've had to deal with in the 100 shelters in the Montreal area, and they expect to be able to handle people any more people who need to come. They can requisition other buildings and create shelters there as well.
All right, Ron, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The CBC's Ron Charles live from Montreal. The federal government is now mobilizing armed forces to help out in Quebec. About 3,500 troops are in the province, and the defense minister says they'll do whatever they can to help people in need.
If it is necessary for people to be moved about, evacuated, or whatever transportation requirements might arise, we're able to do so both by ground and by air. Transportation. Our armories, as long as they are receiving power, could be available for people who can't stay in their homes, and we're happy to provide those facilities. Whatever equipment, there was some generating power that we could perhaps provide in some limited circumstances.
Eggleton says Ottawa hasn't decided if it will offer any financial help. Quebec Premier Lucien Bouchard has already promised provincial aid. And in Ontario, the Ottawa-Carleton region is expected to declare a state of civic emergency any minute now. The Regional Council just wrapped up a meeting. This would allow the region to apply for money from the province to help them cope with the crisis. Ontario Hydro estimating about 60,000 people in Eastern Ontario are without power. Some roads and airports have been closed. School cancelled. Power lines just keep coming down. One Ottawa family's house caught on fire when their fireplace overheated. The family escaped. Their house was destroyed. Fire crews are warning people many fireplaces are not designed to be kept burning around the clock. The power is out for hundreds of thousands of Americans as well. About 150,000 buildings in Maine are without electricity this morning, another 20,000 in New Hampshire. And the system that's causing all this trouble is a huge one. You can see it there. It stretches from the middle of the United States over to the Maritimes. The ice started falling this morning in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. PEI and parts of New Brunswick are also expecting heavy snow. Every school in the region is closed. Weather forecasters say it's not unusual to get freezing rain this time of year, but they do say it would normally last only a few hours. But today, in some places, the freezing rain won't let up, and it won't be letting up until tonight.